Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Secret Life of the St. Croix Freshwater Mussels. This session will be about 50 minutes. My name is Katrina. I work for the Wild Rivers Conservancy as the Environmental Education Coordinator. I'll be in the background moderating the chat and helping with any technical difficulties. So before we begin, I'd like to mention a couple of housekeeping notes. Clicking at the chat icon on the bottom of the screen will open the chat. And if you have any technical issues or comments to make this presentation work better, please put them in there and I will get to them as soon as possible. If you have any questions at any point during this presentation, please type those into the chat and we'll get to them probably at the end of the presentation. So don't worry, they will get answered. Just so you're aware, this session is being recorded and it will be made permanently available on the Wild Rivers Conservancy YouTube account. And with all of that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Ranger Daniel Peterson and biologist Marian Shaffer. Unfortunately, Marian's camera is not working today, so she will be our voice in the sky, so to speak, and she'll chime in unfortunately without a video today. So without further ado, here you go.
Thank you,
Well,
Katrina.
good morning, all, and happy Earth Day. Wonderful, beautiful day, and what a day to share something to you about a very special place known as the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. Yeah, it definitely is quite a place. And I don't know how many of you have been on the St. Croix or the Namakagon rivers. It's a beautiful place. But before we get into that, I want to know how many of you, when you hear or see the words national park, what kind of places come to mind? Well, I hope that some of you can picture there are some very special places that we have in our nation. Yellowstone National Park or Grand Canyon, the Everglades National Park. Well, within our national park system, we have other units or parks or national parks that we have in our nation. All of these, maybe some of you have heard of this up in northern Wisconsin, Apostle Islands National Lakeshore, or maybe the Ice Age National Scenic Trail, found right here in Wisconsin. Well, all these national parks that we have in our nation are custodians. They are a there's an agency known as the National Park Service that serves as a custodian to all these very special places that we have in our nation. And looking at the state of Minnesota, for any of those that are from Minnesota, we've got parks like that. Pipestone National Monument, located down in the southwestern corner of the state, or Voyageurs National Park up in northern, and the Grand Portage, or the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area, located in St. Paul, Minnesota. Then there's Wisconsin. We've got the Apostle Islands. We have the Ice Age Trail, and well, my favorite, and Marian and Katrina and ours favorite, known as the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. What a gem to have out here. And this parkway, or this national park, consists of two rivers, the St. Croix River and the Namakagon River. And by looking at this map, maybe you can find where you are located on this map. And this map shows we have the St. Croix in the Black River. There's other rivers, little small lines that flow into that black line of the St. Croix. There's the Kettle, the Snake, or even the Namakagon. And these are tributaries that feed and drain into the St. Croix River. Well, the Namakagon River is the largest of the tributary that flows into St. Croix. Some of you may also notice that kind of yellow shaded area that's kind of surrounding around the lakes of St. Croix, Namakagon, Kettle, and Snake River. And that's defining the watershed of the area. So all the rivers and streams that hit that landscape, they all drain by help of gravity to the lowest spot. And the lowest spot is the St. Croix River. So that area that's outlined in yellow is the St. Croix watershed. It's like the size of the state of New Jersey, about 7,800 square miles, a huge, huge area. But looking at it a little bit closer, yeah, we have the Namakagon River up there and starts at the Namakagon Dam, and then the St. Croix River starts up in Solon Springs, and it flows all the way down to Prescott to where the Mississippi River is. Yeah, so our rivers, yeah, the St. Croix and the Namakagon, they've been the homes for the Dakota and Ojibwe, Anishinaabe peoples for thousands of years. And yet we've got people that recreate this river today, get out on canoes and kayaks, and just to enjoy this amazing space, this amazing national park that we have, and places and seeing the scenery. But I think a lot of people, pardon the pun, they flock to see the rivers, to see the wildlife, like the prothonotary warblers or the other types of warblers, great blue herons, eagles. Always a great time this time of year to see eagles nesting, or mammals. Lots of white-tailed deer and otters. Oh, and especially the turtles. Always fun to see turtles basking on the logs. Probably today. Boy, I think it's going to be close to maybe 90 degrees today. Should be a good basking day for turtles. Oh, and dragonflies. Lots of dragonflies out there, and looking forward to the butterflies and too. And oh, and fish. Yeah, definitely. Like 94 species of fish call the St. Croix, the Namakagon River home. Really quite a great place to go fishing. I don't know how many of you like to fish, and there's some really good areas for largemouth and smallmouth bass. And well, check out this smallmouth. This young angler had to show off a couple of summers ago at the visitor center in St. Croix Falls. His catch. It's like, wow, what a fun catch that was. That's for sure. But then another very unique species that's found here on the Riverway is freshwater mussels. And I'm going to turn off to Marian so she can talk about it.
Hi, Dan. Unfortunately, Marian's computer restarted, so you're gonna have to
Oh, that's
take
fine.
over.
That's fine. No worries then. Yeah, so freshwater mussels. Yeah, this is really kind of a unique species. There's like 41 species of freshwater mussels. And what a mussel is a bivalved animal. It's two shells that are hinged together. And it's if I advance the slide, oh, there's freshwater mussels. And yeah, so meet the mussel. And so this is Marian. Here's a picture of Marian. Uh, and like I had mentioned earlier, right, the St. Croix River is home to 41 species of native mussels. The St. Croix and the Namakagon is probably one of the cleanest rivers in the upper Midwest, if not the world. And it um, all has to really funnel on the result of what mussels do to this river. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But freshwater mussels, they're they vary in size and shape, small and slender and color and a variety of just patterns. Really quite unique animals. Being that these are bivalved animals, they have two shells that are hinged together, like a hinge, and then inside the mussel shell itself has lots of organs and internal organs, just like other animals. Well, this is a picture of a variety of freshwater mussels that are found. And it kind of a small little, kind of a big poster to look at, but you can see all the different sizes and the shapes and the patterns and the names, especially. I think the names are quite unique. There's well over like close to 300 species in North America. And then sadly, there's a good number of them that are threatened due to pretty much kind of the conditions of other rivers, not necessarily the St. Croix, but other rivers. But we'll talk about that later. So, yeah, like I was starting to mention that mussels are small animals with two shells, kind of like clams, and they live in rivers, not oceans. And they are mostly found right on the bottom. They have an advantage. They have a foot. This kind of color illustration, well, it's not so good. It's this one here. There's the foot. And that foot really helps to move a muscle. Not very fast. It's just very slow, but it's a great little appendager that it can stick out of its shell and help move itself along the bottom of the river. Now, Marian told me, I think that I'm not sure which one. No, she's. We went through the PowerPoint before, and she said, in case I have some technical difficulties, I put in some videos, and I don't think this is the video, but I want to say that this right. We were talking about it's a bivalved, two-hinged animal. They're filter feeders, and that they filter water. They draw in water into their bodies, and they are feeding on the small zooplankton that are found in suspended in the water. Well, this foot that sticks out, yeah, you can see on the bottom of this river, again, this mussel, they are gilded animals. They need to be submerged in the water just like a fish. And so, with the help of that foot, they can move around in the water, and you can see the various lines in the sand. And again, they don't move very fast, very, very slowly. But yeah, here's the anatomy inside a mussel. And it looks very, looking at some of the definitions there, it looks kind of similar, maybe having the same kind of names of other animals, like a mouth. There's a foot. Well, there's gills. That's a good indicator that, yep, this is an animal that survives in water. And then there's these siphons. And these siphons help to draw water in, and they collect the zooplankton or small microscopic organisms that are suspended in the water. They feed on that, and then they shoot that water back out. So once it comes in, what it comes out is really clean water, and that gives the water quality of these rivers amazing, probably exceptional water quality. Well, this picture here is showing a mussel with the gills, but also with the babies in the gills, and we'll talk a little bit about those
Yeah.
what those babies are. Oh, is this
Hey,
Marian?
Dan. I'll chat a little bit about how they filter and clean the water, I think.
Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for covering that. So as Dan mentioned, they have an in-current and ex-current siphon where they draw in water particles from the water column, and then they release fresh, clean water for us. So everyone loves clean water, right? So they provide us clean drinking water and clean water to recreate in and clean water to live by. And they also live, being that they live on the river bottom in the sand and the gravel substrate, they actually provide like an anchoring system to keep the substrate stable, therefore providing a nice home for all of the other animals that live in the river. Next slide. And so if you guys are familiar with coral reefs in the ocean, mussel beds really act a lot like a coral reef, where it attracts many different animals and it provides a home for all kinds of other tiny microorganisms and macroorganisms. And here's a great picture that my colleague took at the DNR. So here's a mussel living in the sand bottom of the river, and all of those little swirly tube-like things. Those are called caddisfly houses, and there's little caddisflies that live in those. They make those little houses out of little tiny pebbles and rocks. And then on top of that caddisfly, you can see there's a snail living on top of the caddisfly. And on top of that snail is a teeny tiny little tube-like animal called a hydra. So they actually house little tiny ecosystems on their shells. I love that. I just love that picture. So now we're going to go into more detail and show you what it looks like when they are filtering the water column. So on the left, you see this dirty, dark tank. And now, in a couple slides, we have a video that's going to show a time lapse of them filtering. This is just an illustration or schematic showing how they live in that substrate. They pull in those particles, and then as they filter the water, it increases water clarity and light reaching through the water column. Next slide. Then you might just have to click to start the video. This is a time lapse showing them filtering the water. And the music is not playing. I apologize. It was really lively music. But here you can see a 7-hour time lapse showing this tank on the left that has mussels versus the tank on the right, which just does not have any mussels. And you can just see how much that water quality improves. Next slide. And so they, believe it or not, they can filter 5 to 10 gallons of water per day. So they can filter basically a bathtub's, some species, so the larger the mussel species, the more it can filter. And some can filter up to a bathtub size worth of water in just one day. And scientists often call them canaries in the coal mine because they signify and tell us cues about if that river or water body is healthy or not. And so the St. Croix, we have all kinds of different species. These are just some of the special species that are actually rare and endangered mussel species. They have very funny names, such as the sheep's nose and the snuff box, and the winged maple leaf. And they come in all different shapes and sizes, so elongate and oval, and some are more square and edged. They have all different shapes and sizes. If we advance to the next slide, I can show you some that I actually collected last summer in one of our surveys. And just beautiful. You can see here. So I'll just start on the upper left photo. That's called a fluted shell. Beautiful brown hickory color, and it has these beautiful, very detailed flutings, they're called, on the right side of its shell there. And then center and right is called the plain pocketbook. I don't know why it's called that because there's nothing plain about it. It comes in all kinds of beautiful different colors. This one is got this beautiful turquoise teal color, and then I've even seen them with pink. And so they're very beautiful. The bottom left there, you'll see it's a pimpleback, because it looks like it has some pimples on its shell. And then the bottom right, we have a lake floater. And that was actually a new species record that we found last summer on the Namakagon River, which is a tribute, it's a river that flows into the St. Croix. Okay, next slide, please. So not only do we have large numbers or species of mussels and high diversity, we also have high abundance and density. So this location is just a photo of about a 1 meter squared area footprint. And there were so many mussels that my mesh bag that I was carrying underwater with me, I couldn't even fit them all in. And just believe it or not, let alone in this picture, there are 7 different mussels. You can see by the little feathery siphons. One second. And um, they do look like just little rocks. Dan, I might have to hand it over to you.
Oh, yeah, I just like amazing that
Girl, mommy is working.
how these mussels just kind of blend in with the other
Oh, mommy's
surrounding
working.
rocks, and that if you're down in the water, that you'd be afraid to maybe step on them. But I think the mussels would be just fine if you were to step on them. Yeah, so one kind of unique thing about mussels is their reproduction, and boy, it's quite a show. I mean, it takes a male and female to produce eggs, and then the female then will release these small babies, but they have a relationship with fish. Baby mussels, like the slide says, that it starts out by attaching to fish, and that they stay with the fish for a while, and they drop off and grow on the river bottom. So here's a life cycle of how mussels, like I said, so there's the fertilization of sperm to the female, and the female then produces known as glochidia. That's a big word to say, huh? Glochidia.
Yeah.
And so it, oh, Mary, are you back on?
I am back on and I can chat a little bit too.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
the female mussels, they have inside the, you remember that picture you saw before of the gills with the inflated gill with all the babies inside? Well, there's millions of little babies, mussel larvae, also called glochidium, inside her gills. And she releases those out onto a fish when the fish comes up to her, and then they snatch onto the gills. See how that glochidium on the left has kind of those sharp teeth, if you will. That's how they latch onto the gills of the fish and then they suck the blood off. And they live on the gills of the fish for several weeks and then they drop off when they're ready and land on the river bottom and grow larger and larger. And then they repeat the cycle all over again. And we have some more videos and pictures. So here is an example of the I think what I think is one of the coolest things that any animal does. So the mussel, it doesn't have any brains or eyes, right? But it knows when a fish and when a specific kind of fish comes up to it. And it protrudes this little piece of tissue from inside its shell to mimic a prey item, such as a minnow or a tiny fish. So that bass in this illustration is seeing that little, what we call a fish lure. So that muscle's making that little fish lure from its tissue and inside its shell, and it's wiggling it in the water column to attract that fish. And when that fish goes up to it, bam, she's going to release all those little tiny baby glochidia we just showed. And then in the next slide, if you advance, I think we have a nice little video to show. The volume may not work as we learned last time, but this will give you the general idea. So this is called a Lampsilis mussel. It's of the Lampsilis family, likely a plain pocketbook. It's hard to tell from, I think that is a plain pocketbook. And there's a bass, and you're going to see what happens here when she releases her little lure. So bass really like little tiny minnow species called darters. And so she, even though she doesn't have a brain or eyes, knows to make a lure that resembles a darter fish, which is just wild. You know, I've been studying mussels for a decade and I still am just so amazed by this every time I see it. So doesn't that look just like a fish? She that little twitching that she's twitching that to make it look like a little darter swimming in the water. And now watch what happens when that fish goes up to that to snatch that prey item. He's gonna go for it. He's curious. There he goes. He's gonna do it. Even has the eye. It's crazy. So there you go. Then she releases that cloud of glochidia from her gills, and those latch on to the gills of the fish. And now you'll see a microscopic. See how they are clamping on to the gills? Very cool. And so now they'll suck the blood off the fish and the nutrients, and they'll live there, depending on the species of mussel, anywhere from 6 weeks to sometimes 6 months for some mussel species. And so that's pretty crazy. And then this is just another different mussel species that is resembling a minnow. And there you have it. Very cool phenomenon. If you want to see more, I'm sure you can just Google YouTube mussel fish lure, and you'll see a lot of cool underwater footage. And then here's just these are some of the species that we have in the St. Croix River. Plain pocketbook, purple warty back. That one's really beautiful. Purple iridescent color on the inside. One of my favorite mussels. We've got the wing maple leaf there, and then the fragile paper shell. And as you can see, they all have a different lure to attract a different fish species. So some mussel species are generalists and they'll pick any fish, but there's some mussels that are very specific, like the wing maple leaf, that only wants a channel catfish. So it's pretty wild. So now I'm just going to jump into some of the threats that our mussel friends are facing, unfortunately, and why their numbers have declined over time, and why we are so interested in preserving and protecting them and boosting their populations. So over time, their habitats have become polluted and dirty, which harms them. They have restricted, their populations are now restricted due to man-made dams being put into rivers. So where their host fish cannot get up the dam and they can't get, therefore, upriver to spread the population. Next slide, please. And then there was also something called the pearl button industry that happened in the late 1800s. This started when man discovered the plethora, bountiful populations of mussels in the St. Croix, Mississippi River. And unfortunately, they didn't realize that this was not a sustainable harvest. So what they would do is they would pluck out these circles out of the shells and manufacture those into pearl buttons and sell them. And as you can see on that bottom right photo, that is just literally a mountain of mussel shells. It's hard to look at that. It's pretty sad. But and then on that photo on the left, they're harvesting mussels through the ice on the Mississippi River. And then once plastic was invented, the pearl bun industry started to decline. And there are places where you can still see remnants of those shells that have the holes in them that they were using for um, creating buttons. Next slide. And then, yeah, we already talked about this. Pollution and sedimentation harms them. Next slide. Dams and impediments harm them because their host fish can't get up. Next slide. And also invasive species, such as the invasive zebra mussels, which I'm sure maybe many of you have heard of because we have them here in the St. Croix River and all across the Great Lakes region. Unfortunately, in the lower riverway, there's only a portion of the St. Croix that has zebra mussels, and that's the lowermost part. So most of the riverway does not, but the lower 20 miles of the riverway does. And so in these locations, the zebra mussels colonize the native mussels and they just infest and clog them up. They suffocate them. And then they also outcompete them for food and habitat. And so that's why I'm here. What are we doing as scientists and biologists and at like Dan, interpretation and education rangers? We are here to save the mussels. So we work with many partners to monitor populations. We also grow the baby mussels and make new populations and reintroduce them into the wild. And we also, which I think is probably maybe one of the most important things, is teaching people about mussels and why they're so important and what they can do to help contribute to saving the mussels and their habitat. So now I'm just going to kind of dive into some photos. Really, I want you guys to get a visual of the work we do and what it looks like a day out in the field where we're collecting mussels and studying them. So we do a couple different techniques. We do scuba diving and snorkeling. And then we will bring all the mussels to the surface and sort them and measure them and age them. Next slide, please. And so, yeah, in some cases, we'll actually tag them. So the one on the upper right there, that is a winged mapleleaf, one of the critically endangered species that we are working very heavily on recovering. So when we collect them, we'll tag them and we'll gather information like length and weight and age, and then we will tag them and put them back into the wild. So we can continue monitoring their population and see how they age and how their health progresses. Next slide. And so we also do, as I said earlier, we do something called propagation, which is a fancy term for raising or rearing or growing out baby mussels. So when baby mussels are tiny, when they are microscopic, it's really hard to see them. Obviously, you have to work under a microscope, but once they get to about 8 months to a year old, you can start seeing them with the naked eye. And so you can see those in that on the bottom right there, that screen they're sitting on. That's actually the inside of one of those cement little mussel houses you see me holding, and my colleague Allie. Those are, we call those little mussel silos, or they're little mussel homes, if you will. And they sit on the river bottom on that screen, so they get water flow and oxygen, and they live under there for the winter. We'll leave them down there on the bottom of the St. Croix for the winter. We found that they really like that and they thrive. And then in the summertime, we'll collect them and we will measure them and see how well they survived and grew. Just some more photos showing us that work. So we, as I said, we monitor beds, we restore populations of endangered mussels, and we also work to educate and inform people about the critical importance of these mussels and the role they play in the ecosystem, and also how they benefit each and every one of us in our everyday lives. Just some more fun photos showing us that work. Never a bad day at the office, I can tell you that. I have yet to have a bad day at the office. So, and then another really fun fact is that sometimes we can use these little um, piles of mussels that otters leave for us to study and learn more about the mussel populations of the St. Croix. So the river otters just love to feast on the mussels. And after they've had their dinner, they pile them on the shore in this big pile. And we call those otter middens. And it's kind of cool because then they're, without us having to do a lot of work, there we just have a big sample of mussels that we can go through and identify and glean more information on the nearby mussel beds. And I've noticed in my time here that it depends on where you are on the river, but the otters can be selective about the kind that they like to eat. So it's kind of cool. Like in the picture on the left at that particular location, they liked the spike mussel. That's those beautiful purple ones right there. Next slide. So this is pretty cool. And Dan, you can hit play on that left one maybe to show just the foot action moving. So there you can kind of just see his little foot. That's their locomotion. They just kind of like drag and then pull themselves. Um, and so these are called fatmuckets. It's a funny name for a mussel, right? And we age them like tree rings. So that middle photo there is a great example. If you count those rings, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think those are 5 years old, but sometimes people have differing opinions. But okay, next slide. Oh, and then when we're down there, you guys, we get to see such cool things like this lake sturgeon. This particular sturgeon has a lamprey attached to its side. It's parasitic. It's not really hurting the sturgeon that bad, so don't worry about that. But we get to see all kinds, like these sturgeon are living dinosaurs. They've been around since the time of the dinosaurs. So cool. Such a treat to see them. We also see things like muskie and brook trout and bass. And the bass are very friendly. The bass always swim right up to you. So in addition to all the work that we're doing on surveying mussel beds and tracking populations and raising baby mussels, we are also studying their host fish. So as I said before, the channel catfish is the host for the winged mapleleaf. And so we're also studying the channel catfish by putting little tracking devices inside them and tracking their movement throughout the riverway to see where they're going and to see where they are when the baby mussels fall off, because we can estimate where they are by the number of temperature they have to be on the gills at a certain temperature for a certain number of days. And so we can calculate that and then check to see where they are in the river at the time of drop off. Pretty cool. And then it's just a big group of us. This work it requires the work of a village. So it takes a village, right? There's so many different partners involved. This is just a few of them. And so how can you guys help? Well, you can help by keeping the rivers clean and not littering. And if you can, uh, pick up the litter when you see it. I try to always have a plastic bag with me when I go on hikes so I can pick up litter. And then also, as Dan said before, just be careful not to step on them. They do look like rocks, living rocks. And so just be careful not to step on them or anything like that. And then, of course, learn and share the story of mussels because I think education is probably one of the most important things. We all love clean water. We all love a healthy ecosystem. So you can't protect what you don't love, right? Or what you don't know. And so spread the word is my advice. And I guess that's all I had. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah, I'm gonna pop back in here to help facilitate questions. If you guys have any, feel free to put them in the chat. We already have a couple good ones, so I hope you're ready. Um, how did the lake floater mussel get to the Namakagon? I think because it's never been surveyed before and you just found it. Is there like, was it always there the whole time or?
Yeah, great question. So I think because this Namakagon River, the tributary to the St. Croix that we surveyed this past year, it was one of the first times anyone has ever done a comprehensive native mussel survey on that river. And so it very well, it could have always, I think it was always there and just wasn't documented. So, um, and then a part of it is a lake floater. Its host fish is actually more of a lake. It's a freshwater drum. And then there's another species. It also, I think it will use basses too. So its host fish, the location that we found it was right below a dam. It was actually right below Namakagon Dam. And so what we think is that in the lake that was above the dam is where the host fish were. And somehow maybe the fish swam downstream and then that's how it got below the dam there. But it was really probably the host fish was living in that lake above the dam.
Gotcha. Um, Also really great question. What do I do if I accidentally pick up a mussel?
Awesome question. Dan, did you want to answer or do you want?
Oh, well, if you want to, Marian.
Sure. Sorry, I just thought you were so yeah, somebody just asked me this yesterday. It is a great question because for a lot of mussels, you can't tell which way is the quote unquote butt, right? Because like a lot of times it's symmetrical and it's just round, and you're like, oh, well, which way is it? Which way is the filter? Does it, or is this the butt? And so to avoid that confusion, a lot of people don't know, just lay it on its side, lay it horizontally, because then that mussel can protrude its little leg out and it can reorient itself just as it needs to be. So yes, if you ever pick up a mussel, lay it flat on its side. And then also, you know, we always say not to touch the mussels and we do encourage not to disturb or move them, but there are some cases where I have seen some like for instance if the dam does a water drawdown, you'll see tons of stranded mussels. And I don't mind, like, we encourage people to try to save them if they can. And if you do that, if you ever see a mussel that is stranded and you decide you want to put it deeper into the water, just make sure you lay it flat on its side.
That's really good to know.
Yeah.
How can we help to stop the spread of zebra mussels?
That's another great question. So prevention is key. So once they've spread, it's too late, right? So we always encourage people to, if they're ever moving from one water body to another, um, to to drain their water from their boat because the boats themselves can harbor water that has like little tiny so baby zebra mussels are called veligers. And so that water can hold baby mussels and they can spread it to a nearby water body. So always, always, always dry out your gear, remove the water from your boat before going to a different water body.
Makes sense to me. Um, what makes a zebra mussel so invasive and harmful?
Yes. So zebra mussels just have the ability to reproduce at a drastic rate, and they can just proliferate any kind of hard structure that they are near. So you might have seen this, but in areas where they live, you'll see docks that are just completely covered or boats that come out of the water. You'll see the entire engine is completely covered, and sometimes they actually destroy um, infrastructure of buildings, of boats, of dams. They just have this ability to completely proliferate, and their numbers can just exponentially increase the longer they're in a system.
Yeah. Okay, we have one classroom who has a ton of really good questions. Uh, so, how did you become a biologist that studies mussels?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I have kind of a fun story. I don't know if I want to tell the whole thing because it would take some time, but I actually just was I was always fascinated with aquatic animals. I lived near water every day. When I was little, I would go to the water and just sit and watch or swim in it. Always just had a fascination wondering what was under the surface, right? So, um, when I went to school, I quickly, out of my undergrad, I went to get my bachelor's degree and I picked internships that involved studying aquatic animals. So I studied some mollusk species down in the ocean, down in Central America. And then when I came back home to the Midwest, I didn't want to put my marine biology dream on hold. So um, I decided to go freshwater. And so I started studying fish and I became fascinated with fish. And I spent several years working on fish on Lake Michigan and I still love them. And I fell in love with mussels in the Caribbean. And now here I moved here to my current position where I get to work on both mussels and fish. And it's full circle. And I just, I couldn't be any happier. I love to take care of not just one animal, but I want to study and understand and take care of all of the organisms.
I love that story. Um, what are the oldest mussels that live in the St. Croix River?
Great question. So we actually just discovered a 100-year-old population of spectacle case a few years ago. We discovered it's called a spectacle case. It is one of those five federally critically endangered mussel species I named before. And we found this little group of one, we call them the grandma mussels because they were literally over 100 years old. They almost looked like living skeletons because they had their shells were so degraded, they had holes in them, and
Mhm.
um, but they were living. And so we found them north of the dam. The St. Croix Falls Dam has been in operation since 1904. And we found them several miles upstream. And we could age them, from their shell, like I said before, but also their host fish hasn't been able to get up that far since the dam was installed in 1904. I think it started operating in 1907. But so that just goes to show you they're well over 100 years old. At some point, the growth rings on their shells got so compressed, though, from them being so old that you couldn't get an exact age. We just know that they're well over 100 years old.
That's
I think
impressive.
those are the oldest ones. Yeah, the spectacle case is one of the most, like evolutionarily, they are the oldest mussel species. So, yeah, that's a fun fact.
Yeah, very cool. And our last question we have right now is, do mussels have muscles?
Great question. I love these questions. Yes, so they do have muscles. Mussels have muscles. They use what's called the adductor muscle to open and shut their two shell valves. So protecting them from predators and environmental hazards. And they also have that little specialized foot that I mentioned before that helps them move across and under the substrate and helps anchor themselves to the substrate.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
we have a couple more minutes and maybe we'll get some more questions, but do either of you have any last minute words of wisdom you would like to share with our attendees today?
Yeah, I guess I'll just say quick, follow your dreams. I know it sounds cliche, but if any of you, after hearing this presentation, are interested in becoming an aquatic biologist, go for it. Just, it does take some schooling, but I always say get the experience, like take opportunities, go do internships, meet people from different networks and agencies, and just get out there and dig in and follow your dream. You can do anything, literally anything your heart desires.
Yeah, very good. And I also just want to throw a plug in, I guess, of the two visitor centers that we have available for all of you to come and visit. One in St. Croix Falls, in Wisconsin, Visitor Center. We're open daily, 10 to 5. And then come over if you're around by Memorial Day, the Namakagon River Visitor Center located in Trigo, Wisconsin. So both these visitor centers, we have an 18-minute video, we've got exhibits, and a great opportunity to become a junior ranger at the Riverway. And anyway, just things for you to do. So we hope I get to see some of you or just say hi. Hey, I saw you and Marian on the summit presentation. So anyway, hope to see you.
Okay, we did get one last question, and I do want to hear the answer from both of you. And we can start with you, Marian. What do you love most about your job?
Oh, that is tough and easy. So I love everything, but I guess what I love the most is, yeah, working to protect and preserve what is one of the last most precious, pristine rivers that exist in our world today. And having my job be literally to continue preserving and protecting that and learning more about the species and protecting them. But as much as the work I love doing, the research, the biology, the restoration, the being under the water, scuba diving, being in that underwater world and seeing how all of the different parts of the ecosystem intertwine and relate and work together as a team. Love all that. But I think what I love equally, if not more, is all of the amazing partners and people I get to work with. The people here right here on this call at Wildlife Conservancy. I work with people from all over the different state agencies, so Minnesota and Wisconsin, a whole bunch of different universities and federal agencies. I work with so many people who are so brilliant and passionate, and I love that part too. This is all the people I work with.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think almost have to echo a little bit of Marianne of my job, working with people. I'm an educating ranger, an interpretive ranger, I would call it. So I work with kids in all ages, and meeting people. Just like Marian said, is that we get in this job working at this national park, we get to see people really from around the world that come to see this amazing place known as St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. And just, yeah, to meet people and then work with amazing organizations like the Wild Rivers Conservancy and many others. Yeah, it's just fun, especially when I get to show somebody who's never been to this area, just talk a little bit about this St. Croix and the things that you can do. So yeah, very cool.
Oh, wonderful. I'm always super grateful, of course, to Ranger Dan and Marian for sharing their time with us today. And mussels are so cool. We could talk about them probably for hours.
We literally could. I could. If anybody ever wants to talk about mussels, just let me know. You know where I am. St. Croix National Scenic Riverway.
Yep, and any teachers, if you want to email me, I can get you connected with Marian if that's
Yes,
what you're looking for.
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope to see all of you tomorrow, where we'll learn about lead and loons as well as helping sturgeon return home. Some really cool topics. So thank you so much for spending your morning with us, and I hope to see everyone tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a great day,
Thank you.
everyone.
Happy Earth
Bye.
Day.
Happy Earth Day. Bye.